G'day folks, Scott here. Welcome to another Dominion Reviews and Playthroughs. Today I'm going to be reviewing Logan. Straight up, before I start babbling, let me just say, Logan was fucking amazing. If you have any intention of seeing this movie and you want to remain 100% spoiler free on it, stop this video, get your ass in the cinema, go see it immediately. Don't watch trailers. If you can avoid the trailers and already have, just go see it right now. Off you go. Bye bye. See ya. Now, for all of you who are left, you might be thinking, well hang on, the X-Men movies have been pretty average over the time and most of them have been kind of shit. I'm totally with you. I went into this movie pretty skeptical about the X-Men franchise because it's been a little bit up and down. Now the first X-Men movie came out years ago. It was okay. It was pretty well cast. The one thing they got right in that franchise was the casting of Professor X and Magneto, being Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. Incredibly good casting, really good dynamic between them. They were fantastic on screen together. I liked them a lot. Wolverine was fine, Jean Grey was fine, Mystique was really good, but the rest of the cast were pretty average. I wasn't a big fan of Rogue in the movie. Storm was awful, Toad was bad. That whole, do you know what happens to a toad if it gets struck by lightning line was utter bullshit. Pretty average. Sabretooth was pretty lame, but, Magneto and Professor X really held the movie together for me. Then Part 2 came out, X-Men 2 United. That movie was great. I actually really enjoyed it. It's probably my favorite out of the franchise. It was a really, really dark story. I liked how the bad guy was a human who hated mutants, who had a reason to do so, named William Stryker. He had this really badass Wolverine kind of chick named Deathstrike, who was the bad guy in the film. Nightcrawler was amazing. About the only sketchy thing about the film was some pretty average wire work in some of the fight scenes, and I could have done without so much, like Wolverine and Cyclops hugging in the ship at the end after Jean Grey met her end. It was a bit much, but a solid movie. X-Men 3, piece of shit. I've only seen it once, I barely remember it, but I don't have good memories about the film at all, really don't. One thing that stands out in my mind was some really early sort of trying to make people look younger CGI that they did on Magneto and Professor X at the beginning of the film. That was pretty lame, but really don't remember much of it. Then a fair while later they rebooted the franchise and they brought out X-Men First Class. Now the one thing again that they did that astounded me, they managed to fluke it twice, well not fluke it because they'd already done it once, was they cast Magneto and Professor X really, really well again with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. They were fantastic. Again, fantastic dynamic together, chemistry together on screen. They were great. Jennifer Lawrence came in to play Mystique. She was pretty good, didn't have any issue with her, but the rest of the mutants in that movie, including Kevin Bacon as the bad guy, pretty average. I really, really didn't dig the flying squirrel, sugar glider, banshee guy, and the wasp girl, and the guy throwing hula hoops out of his chest and stuff. Like, none of those dudes really did it for me. I thought the film was okay, but mainly just because those two guys were so good as Professor X and Magneto again. Then they brought out Days of Future Past, which is going back to the director who did the first two movies, Bryan Singer. Days of Future Past was great. I liked that they took a lot of effort to change the things they'd screwed up in the X-Men 3 timeline, made a whole lot of things sort of make sense again, reset a whole lot of things again. It was a very Wolverine-focused story, cool effects, it was really dark. Totally enjoyed that movie. Outside of them on the side, they've also been doing these spin-off Wolverine movies, the first of which was X-Men Wolverine Origins, which obviously told the origin story of Wolverine. It's a pretty bad movie, mainly ruined for me by the guy who played Sabretooth. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's in a popular show called Ray Donovan. He's a good actor, but in this he was terribly miscast. He was awful. He played the cat thing like so bad and so camp, it was kind of embarrassing to watch. Deadpool was in it, which Ryan Reynolds played, ironically getting to have another go at that franchise much later on and getting it right, which we'll come back to, but the fans hated Deadpool in that. Crap movie, didn't enjoy it. I think Gambit was in it as well, very, very average. Then they did The Wolverine, which was the second movie that they tried on that. I really enjoyed that movie. It was a much more serious tale, much less sort of wanky special effects until the end with the big dumb silver samurai. But if you took that component out of the movie, it was a pretty solid film, and Hugh Jackman was pretty good in it. I kind of enjoyed the movie. And then they come to Logan. Now, just in the mentioning of the Deadpool thing, I've said before, I'm not a comic guy. I grew up on Star Wars and horror movies and, more that kind of thing, so I was never really a adamant comic guy. That being said, during the 90s, I did watch quite a bit of the X-Men animated series, which I believe a lot of comic fans are pretty familiar with and pretty fond of as well. I really enjoyed that. It was a pretty good show. So I had a bit of a grounding in the X-Men franchise and the fact that I'd learned a lot about it from the animated series. Deadpool, I think Logan has a lot to thank Deadpool for, and the fact that 20th Century Fox took a huge gamble with the Deadpool movie, where they put a fair bit of a budget into a really ultra-violent movie. Had a lot of sex gags in it, a lot of crude humor, but it was very violent, and that obviously paid off. It was a very successful movie, of which they're making another one right now. Logan, the violence is ridiculous. It is so violent, I was genuinely surprised. It was brilliant. Now, being the non-comic book guy, as soon as I saw, again, no trailers on Logan, I didn't see a single frame of moving footage of that movie before I went into the cinemas last night and watched it, which again, I'm so grateful for having done. I had seen a few posters and a couple of photos. It's impossible to be on social media without seeing thumbnails as you're scrolling through your feed and all. When I saw the photo of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine or Logan in this movie, I immediately thought, wow, that looks like Joel from The Last of Us. The Last of Us is a really popular PlayStation video game. If you haven't played it, you should. But it's about a guy, an older guy, who has to protect a girl and get her from point A to point B. I immediately took that and assumed that that's what this movie was going to be. And in some ways it is. Now, a lot of my comic book friends were like, oh, no, the Old Man Logan comics came a fair while ago as well. It's not a direct rip-off and everything. But it's hard not to make a comparison when he looks so much like Joel and he's protecting a little girl and moving her from point A to point B. That's where the comparison ends. That little girl, her name is Laura in the movie, she couldn't be more different from Ellie in The Last of Us under any imagination. I guess the closest thing I could compare it to is if you took Eleven, the girl from the TV show Stranger Things, and you multiplied her by 1,000, you still wouldn't be close to how crazy this kid in this movie is. She is fantastic. Now, a couple of elements I'm going to talk about with the movie here are in the trailers, so I don't feel I'm going into full spoiler territory, but again, if you don't want to know anything about this, move on, go watch the movie now. Professor X was in it. Now, I'd seen a photo of Patrick Stewart. I knew he was going to be in the movie. I thought perhaps in a very cameo role, but he was actually in it quite a lot. It was a very sad story, this movie. It's not a happy film by any means of the imagination. It's very harrowing. It's very emotional. It's one of the few times I've ever seen Hugh Jackman where I could really say he did an outstanding performance acting. One of the only other times I would have said that too was in a Christopher Nolan movie he was in with Christian Bale called The Prestige. Again, if you haven't seen that movie, get on it. It's really good. But Logan was a great story. It's not like all the other X-Men movies. Actually, I forgot to mention Apocalypse before. That's how bad that movie was. The last X-Men movie to come out was X-Men Apocalypse. Had Oscar Isaac, who was Poe Dameron in the Star Wars films, in a great sci-fi thriller called Ex Machina, if you haven't seen it. He was woeful in the movie. It was a terrible film. I had to kind of erased it from my imagination, from my memories, but it's relevant in the fact that that was the last X-Men experience I had, which was probably one of the worst movies I saw last year next to Independence Day 2. It seemed like a cross between Power Rangers and that shitty Mortal Kombat sequel. Terrible special effects. They didn't integrate them well. Ironically, it was the same director who had made X-Men 1, X-Men 2, and Days of Future Past, two of which were really, really good movies, but this one was an absolute turd. The reason I bring that up now is Logan is nothing like that in the capacity that X-Men, Apocalypse, and a few of the others are very big spectacles, huge set pieces, massive special effects, huge amounts of CGI. Logan is not like that at all. It definitely has computer effects in there. Some of the gore, or a lot of the gore, is actually done with computer effects because of the length of his blade. It's going through people's heads and things like that. But it was very low-key, it was very subtly done, and there was nothing over the top and flamboyant the way there was in the previous X-Men movies, which I really appreciated. It made it a much more human story, a much more emotional story. I could talk about it all day. One more thing I'll bring up about this is never in the history of this franchise have I ever gone back to the cinema to see an X-Men movie again. That's happening with Logan. I went and saw it with a mate last night. My wife didn't really have a chance for us to go see it together, but she can't not see this at the movies. So we're going to go again in a few days, and that's never happened. So if you haven't had enough from this to say that, hey, I fully endorse this movie and I enjoyed it a lot, man, I really did. Get your ass to a cinema and go and see Logan. You shouldn't regret it. Just don't expect a huge explosion-y extravaganza. Expect a very harrowing, emotional human tale. Very, very good. I strongly recommend it. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There'll be a button in a sec on that side of the screen to do so if you haven't already. Thank you again. Go see the movie. Cheers.